So, happy Christmas everyone, and of course, during Christmas, you don't have to go to that annoying work, right? So, this year, we've had so many failures of games, right? So many games that massively fail, and also great games. I love this year in both ways, right? But, I think we hear all the time that, in lack of better words, right, Woke games are failing, right? The thing is that I have never really seen the issue as the games being self-woke. That's what they're failing. The reason they're failing, right, is because the people making the games are woke. So this video here, guys, that's a Christmas, work vacation, right, Christmas vacation, so on. I want to bring in a little bit of my own experience then, being a developer for many years, right, and explain to you, hopefully then people in the world here, it's a very candid video here, some of my experience in the game industry of just incredible, annoying, woke situations, so to speak, like a better terms, and just how it makes basically working at the company, torture, right, And I say it over and over again, I really want to hammer that point down, right, because I think you can make a game, right, that has like a trans main character or a gay main character or whatever, right, and it can be super progressive, whatever. But the problem really is, and I will hammer this point down, the problem really is that the people that want to make that game, that want that to be the focus of the game, they suck at making games. That's a real that's a real issue, right? Yeah, that's a real issue. And maybe isn't that strange thinking about inherently, right? Because I, as a game designer, combat designer, level designer, and so on, right? But mostly like a lead game designer, creative director guy, I focus right on the core gameplay experience, usually, whatever the game is. So mostly combat system, right? If it's like a role-playing game, the combat still is the main thing, right? And then it usually is the character development tree or something like that, right? If it is an RTS, right, it's of course a combat massively, so forth, right? So for a person, inherently, right, to really, really be invested, you're an activist, right? If activism be invested in, I need to have like a main trans character or whatever, so forth. Yeah, that's not how I think, That's not how an actual game developer should think, right? An actual game developer, again, should think about how do I make the best combat, right? You should think of how do I make a good gay character. It's like a really weird way to kind of, think about, I feel, games to begin with. So I think it's inherently a big reason why they failed, right? But it is, of course, much worse than that. So let's get into it. So side note, of course, happy Christmas, guys. Like I said it right, leave a comment below. How do you celebrate Christmas? Because for me, it's a classic thing where I'm from Sweden and Norway. So there'll be a lot of Swedish comparison here, then, guys. Important here, bring it up because obviously most of my stories here will be from Sweden, and you will understand this is super woke. And in Sweden, then, we have Christmas 24th December. My wife is 25th, right? So it's kind of a classic thing that it's depending on where you live in the world. And of course, in Japan, you can celebrate it, but not really, kind of Western, but whatever. But I digress. My point is that this is Sweden now, basically. Imagine we're in Sweden now. Most of my stories in the video here are from Sweden. I can give you some bad stories from working with Americans or whatever, and so forth, right? But I think you can imagine, right, with Dustborn, great game, yeah. I know Dustborn is, of course, Norwegian, but it's basically the same thing, right? Like Sweden, Norway, Denmark is super, PC left progressive woke, and Sweden is the worst, right? And honestly, when I saw a game like Dustborn, and actually I know people that work the game, right? When I saw that game, I was like, this is only a game that Scandinavians could have made, right? And especially, and I want to derail, but one point here about that Dustborn is that, I said on previous video too, right, is that especially Norwegians, because I love a lot of them, I'm half Norwegian, right, Norwegians are very into American culture, like much more than Swedes and Danish and Finnish and so on. So I was impressed at all how Dustborn is taking place in, America, and it's like very anti-Trump and all this, because they're very obsessed with that in Norway. The Norwegians are very, very into America. It's been my whole life, yeah, like they're very, very invested into American culture. Arguably the country in the world after America itself that is into America is Norway, like seriously. For example, Tesla cars, right, are incredibly common in Norway, much much more common than in Sweden. And of course you could argue, say, well, the reason why is because Norwegian's government has not a tax benefit on electric cars. That's true, but the reason they have this to begin with is of course because the country is very Tesla pro. So it's a little bit, who would for it. But I digress. Okay, so we're in Scandinavia now, guys, for the storylines here. Okay, so all my stories are in Scandinavian context, so you're getting the super woke, right? So the tissue then, I'm gonna give you an example now of a colleague that I work with. This is a video I've taken for actually a lot of years now, because I could easily sit here for 10 hours about this one guy, okay? So I want to really emphasize here, right? This is the worst person that I ever worked with in my life, okay? I could make a video only about him, and I could say, I could list like all of his, insane stuff he did, right? For over 10 hours easily. Like, it's insane how much of bad stuff this person did, right? And I don't say this to be like, oh, this guy's terrible. I say that because this is how like woke like positivity, how that like toxic positivity ruins a game company, right? And it's so incredibly common in game companies. But let me first give you like a brief story how this guy is insane and terrible. This is again one of many stories, okay? Many stories. But how they can come back, and it's very, very Swedish, and it's so incredibly hard to it's just really annoying. But anyway, so let me explain what happened then. So this guy, he was flying to Finland from Sweden because we had another studio. We work with the same company, owned another studio, right? Sister studio, whatever we call it, a game company, whatever. So he flied to Finland, Helsinki, and then he's gonna fly back, right, the same week to us back in Sweden. But he never appeared. He just never appeared again. No, he didn't appear that week. He never appeared on the next Monday. We heard nothing from him, nothing, no mail, nothing at all. And then later that Monday evening, he was sending me images of him being at a strip club in London. It's a true story. He's like, he sent me, yeah, bro, I'm like spanking strippers. He was sending me like really inappropriate sexual images with him doing some weird stuff in like underground rave parties or something like that in London. And then he kept doing that the whole week, like Monday to Friday that week, supposed to be at work. And I mean, like, please stop sending me these weird images. And like, why are you at work for? It's like, yeah, bro, I'm partying. Right. So this guy, again then, one of his many stories, right, was that he did come to work. Obviously, the office, the company has paid for his trip, right, to feed in the back. So he didn't use that money. He somehow took the ticket he had to go back to Sweden and flew to England instead, company money, right, and then sent proper images to me and other co-workers that go into work, sexual stuff, right. He did get fired, okay. And that's a woke issue fault, okay. This guy's crazy, and like I said, 10 more stories about this guy in a very similar, weird way. I tried to get this guy fired for years. I went to the CEO after this incident and said, okay, but now you finally have to fire him, right? Because he can't send like sexual images of himself doing like prostitutes or whatever, right? To like 10 coworkers. This is insane, right? You have to fire him finally, right? And the CEO tells me that I can't fire this guy because if I fire him, no one else is gonna hire him. He's so incompetent and crazy and bad that I can't fire him because I feel so sorry for him. That is the woke in a nutshell. So this guy is a dangerous predator, and I actually, not even joking here, this guy is even worse, okay? This guy, I figured out that he was convicted for manslaughter, killing a guy with a car. This guy had a restraining order against his wife and children. So he once sat at the work office, started crying in the middle of a lunch. This is a true story, seriously. He started crying in the middle of a lunch, and I was like, what's he crying for? And he's like, oh, it's my son's birthday, and I can't meet my son. And we were, you have no kids. This guy has children. This guy's a loon, he has kids. And he's like, oh, my wife has a restraining order. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, now it makes sense. Okay, he has a child with someone that hates him. Okay, now I get it, okay. So we kind of made fun of him, sure, right? So this guy then, he was a previous, convict. He was a convicted convict for killing someone with a car drunk. Had 3 kids, has him in 10 years. Convicted for that. Didn't go to work, super incompetent. And he would talk to like players in our games on like the forums and trying to sell them stuff, like give them stuff for images, stuff like that. It was crazy, all this stuff, and this is so more. This is to the top of the iceberg. And I'm thinking with the manager, the CEO being like, please fire this guy. Like the 10th time I'm like, please fire this guy. And he's like, we can't fire him because he's so incredibly bad. And I'm like, I know he's bad. And like, yeah, but who's gonna hire him then? So he's so bad, they feel sorry for him. That's that toxic positivity vote, right? That ruins a company. Now, of course, this guy's an extreme example of it, but I've seen it so many times where, because they're so, progressively super woke or whatever, right? The managers, they just refuse to get rid of bad people, right? This guy's an actual convicted felon. Like, this guy's an actual crazy person, like in many ways. And yes, they're like, oh, but I feel sorry for him. I took a chance with him. You should, it was a bad chance, right? And then, the owner is like, no one else will ever give this guy a chance. Like, yeah, he doesn't deserve a chance because he's a terrible person. And every time you give him a chance, he, he betrays you. Right? You shouldn't give him a more chance. Sorry if I'm blabbering now, but you get my point. It's just like, you're sitting in the office, you'd be like, are you insane, right? And it really reminds me of this case, again, in Sweden, then, where, this is a famous case in Sweden, where a man, he murdered a woman. He stabbed her like 20-30 times in the back in this asylum place. And Don Eliasson, famous Swedish politician, he was the current minister of police, something like that, was the police chief, whatever it's in English. So he's been interviewed then, like the police chief, right? And he's just like, immediately, instead of talking about the victim, who got stabbed 30 times, he's like, I feel sorry for this young man. What would make him have his childhood has been terrible? And it was like, he probably has a kind of Joker origin story, And it's just like, what is this thing, right? And that's how this is how I felt about the guy too, right? In that Vogue game company, we're like, but this guy is a like convicted loon, basically, right? And he's like one of the worst person ever in my life. And the boss is just like, no, but I can't fire him because no one else would ever give him a chance. And everyone's like, yeah, I wonder why, right? So we stuck with him, and they refused to get rid of him, right? But it's so funny too, because I don't want to go on this guy too much, because I have more samples, so don't worry, guys. But it's like, not only was he just weird, he also would lie on the actual work he did. So he was supposed to be like a tester and community manager, and if you gave him a bug in your game, right, or test this, this stage, and it's a bug there, he wouldn't do that. He would just so if you're working with Jira is a production tool thing, so you have tickets, like bugs, right? Oh, is it a bug or not? This guy would he would just check the bugs and be like, yes, I've done it. So he actually wouldn't test it. He would just go to the Jira and be like, done. So he literally didn't do any work either, right? So he was such an incredibly bad employee that the rest of us had to work around him. So we were just like, well, if you give him a bug, he's gonna lie in the year, right? And just make it harder for us to work with him, right? So we have to just not give him any tasks, right? And then, of course, the boss comes to us and says, oh, you're being mean to this guy. You're not giving him any assignments. You're bullying him. We're like, but he doesn't do his work. If you give him assignments, he destroys them on purpose. He's such a crazy person that at best, he does them by pure incompetence. But he actually is kind of crazy. So actually, if you give him an assignment, he will make it worse, right? So we can't give him assignments. Please fire him. And the boss is like, you have to give him assignments because he feels sorry about it. Right? So this is a true story, guys. The boss, and this honestly, this 4 owners company, they were all voting for the feminist party in Sweden, the FI, like the most far left communist party in Sweden. So they were all extremely far left. They were woke by wokeness, okay? So they were openly extremely woke. That's the whole thing, right? They were so incredibly woke that they were like, and my CEO was telling me, I know this guy is pointless. I'm like, yeah, I know he's terrible. They're like, yeah, we know. But you have to kind of, pretend he's like, he's like a dog or something. Yeah, you have to pretend he's a little pet him on the sideline, right? So it just keeps going like that. It's insane. So that's kind of how this toxic positivity, right, ruins your workplace, because, like I said, we have a guy that we know doesn't do anything, or actually he's negative. He's a net negative, right? Even if he doesn't do his crazy tech stuff, whatever, he's a net negative. And then the owner is like, but you have to pretend that he's doing good or something, so he feels better. Like, I don't want to do that, yeah. So you have to. It's even worse because I think everyone knows about the concept, right, of walking on eggshells, right? That's a very the woke field, right, which kind of ruins companies in general. And of course, I have a lot of experience with that in Sweden, where you have to kind of use, I can't say this thing and I can't say that thing, and that's a general issue with how the woke. Why the woke games fails, is supposed to have that like walking on eggshell feeling all the time, which I mean is that, again, it isn't necessarily having like a gay main character doesn't work or whatever, right? It's more that working with a person, like this like white whale that is obsessed with having that kind of character, right? And we have to talk to her and say that, well, your art is effing terrible, or your code doesn't work or whatever, right? They have a tantrum and they scream at you and they go full, jiggly, triggly puff at you, right? Triggly puff at you. And you're like, that's the real issue, right? The issue isn't to have like an actual trans character or whatever, so forth, as the main character. It's more that, again, people that want to have that, they're incompetent, right? And also, even worse so, they can't handle any kind of criticism. Yeah, they can't handle anything, right? They're very, very like juvenile in the brain, so that's obviously like a very common issue generally on these like Vogue companies. You're like, oh my god, I can't talk to this person without them tantruming. You know what I mean? I can't tell her her code is bad, or his graphic thing doesn't work. The acid is like buggy or whatever. You have to fix that. Then he's gonna cry or something. And I mean it literally, man, that's my life. Jesus Christ, man. Have I had those situations where I like try and talk to someone, right? Someone under me, especially as a manager, having to try to talk to someone which is supposed to be a grown-up, and be like, your work is shit, redo it. And obviously you come in more diplomatically, be like, well, this doesn't work, can you please fix this? Oh, but I did my best. Like, yeah, we have to do better, like, it's so forth, right? So sorry if I'm jumping a bit there, but that's a common issue, right? That's a common issue. The thing is that those people, even though they're incredibly incompetent and you kind of ruin your life, right? They're still better than this guy. But this guy literally is so bad that he like negative, like he's purposely ruining, whatever you're doing, right? I think so at least, or he's just insane. But whatever. Again, come back to my earlier point is that even though he's so incredibly bad, the boss is like, but you have to pretend that he's good. You have to make him feel good, right? And that I think is that incredible toxic positivity, which is again worse. That's what I pointed. This is worse, right? Toxic positivity is worse than walking on eggshells, right? Walking on eggshells is a more feeling of like, I just have to avoid, making any kind of statements or any kind of action because this shit they will cry or something, right? And again, it's a more common experience, right? Where you have to just be like, I'm going to talk now to my employee and I have to tell them that they're terrible at the job, but I have to tell them in a way so they won't cry, basically, right? That was kind of the eggshell feeling. You're like, I have to kind of maneuver this, like it's very annoying, right? But that's how it is. But the positivity is actually different then, because that's more like, oh, this person is effing terrible, but I have to pretend that I like them because the CEO is like, well, I feel so sorry for this idiot. Tell them they're good. I'm like, So it gives you even worse experience, because not only do you have to kind of stay walking on eggshells to not trigger them, you also have to like pretend that you like them or something. It's just really bad, or at least not like them, but like give them fake compliments or whatever. Yeah, it's just super weird. But honestly, in that guy's case though, I told the CEO many times too, I was like, why can't he work from home from? Like, if you refuse to pay this guy, and he doesn't work anyway, you just tell him he has like 5 days a week at home or something. You send him home and you can just throw him money. If you want to, throw your money at him, do it then, but he'll be at the office. No one wants him here. Yeah, just send him home and pay his salary then, you know what I mean? So eventually that was kind of the only somewhat solution they got into, that he didn't have to go to office every day. Then of course eventually the company went broke, so that literally was a go walk or broke situation there. The company today is bankrupt, and this is like 10 years ago. So, and I also want to put it out, this is 9 years ago. 9 years ago, yeah. So almost 10 years ago now, right? Think about that too, right? I have said it for many years. It's no wonder if I had to be done myself, right? And I didn't do YouTube, 9-10 years ago, right? But there's no wonder I sit here today and that I am so incredibly negative, right, to this like Vogue, positivity, whatever, so on, right, super communism, Marxism, whatever, because being from Sweden and Norway, right, obviously, that's borders, yeah, but obviously, right, I've seen this thing years before in America, right, when I've been in with Japanese developers, American developers, they're not even close to this, right, obviously Europe and most of Scandinavia are far, far ahead of this thing, so I've seen the issue for many years before that, right? And for me, it's very easy to, I see this. Oh, this is what I recognize from my previous experience, right? But anyway, so there's one guy, but I think it kind of speaks to this like idea, right? Of just like, oh my god, it's so bad. So another example now. I'll give you another example here. This is another game company, still in Sweden though. Like I said, we keep on Sweden being woke here, but it's really easy though. And honestly, right, I have bad stories from working with Americans or whatever. Right? Even though I love you guys in America, and honestly, as a side note, last time I was in America, pretty recently in Orlando, it's kind of funny because then I get more into my coworkers. They're like, oh yeah, no, then I'm like, yeah, I love Orlando. So no, I love Americans. Yeah, you guys are great. No, but seriously, if there's one thing I like with Americans, compared to, for example, then Swedes, right? You know, and obviously I'm generalizing here, but it is that feeling actually that if you talk to people in America, you can say, oh, this is a terrible idea or whatever, or oh, yeah, you can fight it out, you know, and not with maybe with the crazy loons, but for the average American, it's much easier to handle, you know, criticism and debating so right. But Swedes as a culture is very like, you're not really allowed to critique people, right? You know, Swedes are very introverted, but it's not just really introverted a little bit, but most Swedes are kind of like, you don't say that thing here. Swedes are very much like, it's hard to be directly anti someone, right? So Swedes are inherently a little bit of woke speak, but it really is. Right? Swedish culture is a little bit woke inherently in that sense. So it's very much harder in Sweden to like talk to someone and say this is bad or this has to be changed or whatever. It's super hard, much harder in so that's why I like Americans, right? It's much more open culture. Yeah, it's like, oh, we have to do a fixed thing or whatever, but. No, but it is a very different thing, but obviously, yeah, Florida is fun. Orlando is the best because it's a mixture of all the best stuff in America. But anyway, back to Sweden. So next company in Sweden I worked for, this is the next company after the previous company now. What I'm talking about here, directing criticism, is a perfect example again of toxic positivity, I suppose, but also a little bit lefty, whatever. But I guess toxic positivity is actually the real issue of here. So the next company I worked for, and I was the creative director or whatever, lead game designer, doesn't really matter what I was, but well, to some extent I guess it mattered to some extent, but not that much. So, well, anyway, so we have this game, right? We're there for a year or so, maybe a little more, but whatever. The game has been, you know, it's run, there's a beta out there, you can play the game, and so forth, right? Now, I come to the office on Monday, normal, you know, and the game is broken, right? So the game is up on like an alpha stage. People that have the app can play the game, right? So we get some, you know, feedback and we get some data and bugs and so on, right? But the whole game is been done. It's just down the whole weekend, almost from sometime Friday, which of course is a massive negative, right? And usually I actually would work from home, unfortunately, right? That if something like that happened, I would usually fix it on Saturday or Sunday. Because usually I would get some mail or whatever or Discord, but this time I missed out on it for some reason. So I'm just like, oh, it's been shitty, it's been down the whole weekend, it's terrible. Why didn't no one tell me for? Because I mean, working overtime, I don't think it's that bad to like, because usually those bugs are easy to fix. So it takes me like an hour or so. So if I sit on Saturday morning, I'd rather fix it Saturday morning so the game works right. But whatever. So I fixed the thing now, Monday morning. And the thing is that when I'm fixing this thing, I use Jenkins. It's I guess Jenkins, how do I spell this thing? This video isn't about that stuff, but Jenkins is like a builder helper, a pipeline. Jenkins helps you to, you know, kind of construct your builds, okay? So you have a build, right? You have all your code, you compile it, and Jenkins help you with that stuff, okay? In this thing, we also have these QA scripts that show you if something is bugged or whatever in the units and so forth, right? So the way I usually fix these kind of bugs, and it's like a show so bug this work, right, is that I will go to the latest main deployed bridge thing, then I will look at that code in Jenkins, then I will like backtrack who has done it. So this is important here, so I backtrack who had created this stopper on the main, right, and I go to her, what's it called? What's it called? She had done her own a fork. It's not called a fork. It's called her branch. Sorry, I'm tired. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. It's super children. No, her branch. So she has forked right from the main previously and worked on her branch, and then she has, you know, taking her new stuff up to the main again, right? So the way I do it, I backtrack. I go to Jenkins, I look at the stuff, I figure out who has created the bug, right? I go to their branch, and then I kind of re-look at their code or whatever it is, and this is her code. I go into her code, and then I figure out what the issue is in her code. Then I fix her code on her branch, do a new deploy on the branch, look at the branch works, then I do that branch up to the main again, and our main works, right? So basically, I always find it easier to fix other people's fault by going into like their specific issue they worked on, right? Than rather try to, because it's much easier to kind of backtrack, so it's quite easy. Basically, long story short, if you're a developer, it's quite easy for me, in this case, right, to understand who did it, who did it bad, right, It's very easy for me in this case, because that's also how I work just normally, how I backtrack it, right? And I'm here early morning, and I want to talk, anyone else here, who done the issue, right, And, of course, this teaches me one very important thing, and that is that when I'm looking at this person's branch, and I'm running all the QA scripts on their branch, right, I can see that their branch is also bugged, right? So, of course, one of the reasons, one of the rules, whatever the company, rules, one of the rules of the company, of course, is that you're not allowed, of course, to upload anything from your branch to the main if it doesn't pass the checks, right? And running the checks on her branch, I can see immediately that this is not, this isn't pass check, right? So you should never be allowed to touch the main, right? And, obviously this person that hasn't done the job correctly, right? Because they haven't actually done the typical, like, testing, verifying, and so on on their own stuff beforehand, right? So that's one fault, right? Second fault, this person should never do it on a Friday, right? It's a classic, like continuous independency, whatever. You kind of have that typical development. It's like you don't do a main change on the main branch, on the major thing, on a product open for the public, whatever, on a Friday late, right? So this person done like 7, 8, late Friday, when everyone has to go home, right? It's like the worst time ever do it too. Also, of course, against the rules, right? So now, of course, I'm just like, well, this person, so I get fired, right? No, but I'm just like, this person has to have a talk, okay? This person has done this 3 times before, you know what I mean? And I've told them that this person shouldn't be allowed, of course, to actually do stuff to the main, right? They should be banned from that if you can't trust them doing that. And you have to send this stuff to me or someone else, then we have to put it up on the main, right? But of course we can't do that. That would be mean, Oh, that would be mean, I mean, honestly, this person is just shit, right? This is terrible stuff they're doing, right? And the CTO was like, oh, we can't tell her that. But she's literally breaking our main like once a month for the last 4 months now. And she refuses to follow the rules. Every time, the thing, right? And CEO was like, yeah, but, she's gonna cry or something. I'm like, yeah, okay, what's fire then? No, but seriously, like, this person kept doing, if you do it once, okay, that's stupid, but whatever. Everyone does mistakes, right? But this person did like once a month, seriously, this mistake. Over and over again, right? And the last time it happened, I was so used to fixing the mistake that I could immediately tell, I know where the code is going to be wrong, because they always do this. They always fail with this, kind of if statement thing, basically. To break it down, but basically it's like, well, this person can't write if rules, so I can't even figure out what the bug is, but I even haven't looked at it. And I was like, sitting there, having to fix this person's issue over and over again, right? At least once a Monday a month for the last 4 months, and telling the CTO that I want to fire this person, or at least, like I said before, right? I said last week before too, last month, whatever. This person should not be allowed, right? Should be banned from having the access, Which nothing wrong with that, Like where I work right now, not everyone can enter every room in the building. You know what I mean? Like that building is locked for you. You have to be a boss to get into that room, whatever, yeah. But no. This company, Swedish game company, super woke, everyone has to have access to everything. No, she has to have access to the main, but why? She should touch the main. She has to be able to do these things. Like, no. And at the same time, they can never be reprimanded. They can never be learn anything. It's just ridiculous, right? So I think that's the example really, really bothered me for many reasons, right? And also I think the easiest reason to fix it, honestly, would just be that, well, if this person doesn't understand how this different version control system works, right, we will have to leave it to someone else, like me or someone else, right? Because I was the designer, I was also basically the QA manager, whatever. Like, we didn't have a QA manager, so I was basically like also responsible for like build deployment kind of thing. So like, well, let me do it. Like, you know what I mean? If you have an asset, you want to put up on the mail me it, and I will put up correctly, right? Because one thing I will do is I will run all those scripts, right? I've written half those scripts myself, right? I will write and I will run them every time because there's a point doing that. But also this point, honestly, that this person, I told her over and over again that run those scripts. If I can run them on your branch and I see it's a failure, why haven't you run them on? You should never been didn't, Stop being sloppy, right? Stop being lazy, right? It's a pure laziness thing. Follow the rules, right? These rules are here for an actual reason. You broke the game for 3 days because you don't follow the rules, But whatever. The point is that it's up to me. I would have fired the person immediately, right? Basically. No, maybe not. But I would have fired them after 4 times, definitely. But if it was up to me, I basically would have told them, never do this again, right? And if they do it second time, I would have said, okay, you're an idiot, so I'm just gonna, but you still do good assets, so whatever. I'm gonna, remove your assets, right? I'm gonna remove you're not gonna have admin control anymore, basically. I'm gonna remove this thing for you. Because you can't be trusted with that, That's just how it is, right, It's that to let them go, right? It's not harder than that. But instead you sit there being like, no, we have to be nice to everyone. And it was so frustrating. And the one thing that I remember so well too, because I had a meeting with many times, and also put out right, I am also a manager, right, at this company. Think about it too. I'm not a random employee. I'm like her boss too, right? Yeah. So she's like, it's not even that I am just some random like, oh, I'm a 18-year-old like fresh out of college kind of thing. Like, oh, you're a stupid boss. I'm actually also one of the managers, one of like the top hierarchy of the company. So it's also really weird when I have to have a meeting with like the CTO being like, you're not doing your job. This is your job to fix that thing. And you can't control your people, so I have to go have a meeting with you. You're terrible at your job, you know what I mean? Like, it's got this really weird feeling to it, to fight between like the managers because they don't do it. But anyway, I digress. I remember one thing so well though with the situation, and that was what, so this happened several times, right? I have a meeting with the CTO, right? He's obviously, again, he's also very, very woke. And I keep saying it, but I think that, I said many times, I don't like the term woke in that sense, because I feel it's very like umbrella term now. But whatever, he's like far lefty crazy guy, whatever. He's a very weird person, or honestly, not because he's lefty necessarily, but he's some kind of sociopath or whatever. No, but seriously, this guy, and this is also what I'm saying his name here, because he's a very, very psychotic person. He's just like, he's a very weird guy, because he basically has no empathy whatsoever. And I mean in a technical term, not the whole, I mean actually, this guy doesn't have empathy. Like, he's really weird. So he doesn't understand people's feelings at all. He's a very, very strange fellow, basically. He goes some kind of, but honestly, before I even worked at that company, when I had an interview with him then, before I got hired as the first person hired, the other owners of the company, all the founders, they told me that this guy is gonna be really weird and insulting and so on. But he can't help it. He's just like a weirdo. He's like the best coder in the country, but he's just completely insane. So you have to just kind of roll with it, And he is like a nutcase in many ways. But anyway, I say that because I'm having a meeting with him again, right, about this. Like, you have to either you fire this person or you have to, remove their privilege, because you can't handle having the privilege, right? So having a meeting, right, and of this, we have 5 managers, and I'm one of them, and he's one of them, obviously, right, and we are the tech guys, right, the other 3 are like a CEO, COO, and artists, so they're kind of art and graphics or production, and we are like the, more technical-based managers. So we're having a meeting, 2 of us, and I'm just like, but you have to understand that this can't go on, right, like, this is just crazy. And what I remember so well is that, because I said he has a very hard time with emotions or whatever. He's like, oh, but if I but every time I try to talk to this person, they get sad and they cry or something. And I'm just like, yeah, and how are you gonna tell them if you fire them or something? That, yeah, you can't fire someone because they cry or something? It's basically the level. And he's like, oh, I can't do it, you can't handle their emotions, So I'm like, okay. And I've been in this situation, as you can probably assume, I suppose, many times in my life, where I feel I have to play the bad guy. Same thing at my current work too, honestly. I thought a little bit. Hopefully no more course watch this video. But honestly, I feel actually, even at my current work, I feel that I often have to play the bad guy, because recently not recently, but like half a year ago, so my current work, it was the same thing in 2, and I was like, but this guy, long story short, basically that person owes us hours, basically, right? So not money, but like in our other project that they pay our hours, basically, right? And my manager, well, not my manager, but my like the assistant manager is supposed to, or whatever it's played, but that guy is supposed to go to them and ask them for 100 hours of work time, basically. But he's like, oh, no, 105. It's like, I have to do with the question. I mean, it's very common that I have to be the bad guy. I have to be the guy because I don't know, I don't care. I'm like, no, I can fire her, that, you know? Oh, she cried to me, I don't care, right? I should always like crazy, but no, but it's like, it's so common, and I feel especially in this like game industry in Sweden, that I had to play the bad guy so many times, right? Because a guy like him is like, I can't fire her because every time, well, not fire her, he can't even tell her that she's doing the wrong thing by breaking the game, right? Every time he even breaks up the sub, she cries, you know. He's like, oh, and I was like, but you're not even firing her. You're just telling her that you have to do this thing, and if you don't do that thing, then you get fired. Yeah, you can't even warn her. You can't even, you know, he's like, no, I can't handle that. And I'm just like, okay, I can fire that for you. You know what I mean? And then I have to go over there and be like, do this again, and you fired. You know, like, I have to always be that guy. No, but, and obviously I'm a little more, diplomatic when I explain to them, right? But certainly have I got into situation many times where it's like, no, I have to go over here and tell them that you're doing a terrible job and improve it, right? And it's so weird too, because especially again in Sweden, but also other countries, especially, is that I've been there, and it's also in the same game company. And the same company, one of the artists did a terrible job. Like, he didn't follow the rules, but he didn't follow documents whatsoever, right? And again, I have to go over there and be the bad guy, right? I'd be like, your art is terrible. Like, you have to redo everything you've done. And he's like, oh, but I did this for a whole week, 4-hour work. Yeah, it was terrible. 4 hours was terrible. And it's kind of funny because, how is it? I feel that I have to play the bad guy, like really hardcore. I keep saying it, but I mean that because all the other managers in that company was super woke and, you know, super toxic positivity, right? Which means that if an artist did a really terrible job, right? It's like a really ugly character they made. It's really, really ugly. This guy has completely failed. Hasn't followed any of the things he was told to follow. No document. It's a really, really terrible character model. No one is ever gonna pick the character. It's absolute horseshit, right? And Seth, all the other 4 managers tell him he's like amazing and everything, right? But I have to be the actual one, you know, telling the real truth, right? And the other 4 guys are best telling me, you have to do it. You're good doing it. I have to come into that and be extra mean, you know. I can't come in there and tell you that, yeah, that character should need some work, you know. He's like, because everyone else telling him is great, right? Everyone else on these crazy woke guys are telling him, the other 4 guys telling him that this is amazing, right, you know. So I have to come in there and be like, this is effing horseshit, okay? This is the worst thing I've seen this year. Throw it away, maybe get fired. You know, I have to play that guy, right? Or else he won't get it, right? Or else he won't get it. So that's all super annoying. So that's what I mean. You have to be this hardcore mean guy. Yeah, that's why working with woke people is so annoying. You sorry, I'm stuttering. But you're the only non-woke guy working with other woke managers. It drives you crazy because you have to play extra mean guy because you have to kind of compensate for those guys never telling anyone the truth. You're like, oh my god. You're like, you have to come in and be like, this is shit, okay? Throw it away. Like, it's terrible. Burn it. Yeah, like, you have to come in and be like, oh my god, it's so bad. Like, you have to come in there and be extremely harsh, whereas no one takes you seriously, right? Because, you know, everyone else is telling them, giving them what's called a beer hug, you know, björntjänst Swedish. Yeah, Swedish called a björntjänst, a beer favor, where you give someone, like, you're telling them fake news, right? So they will be happy for the time being and then fail later, right? But it brings us, I think, to a good level of Concord, right? You know, obviously Concord is a terrible game in many ways, right? But I think Concord is a good example where even like the far lefty loonies are agreeing that it looks absolute shit, right, you know? And they might say, oh, they actually defend it. But actually, I think that, yes, some of them are defending it sometimes, but even most of the leftists are like, no, this game is actually really, really ugly, right? Because it looks incredibly hideous. And, of course, Concord failed for many reasons, but it's a good example of, like, you know, go woke or broke, because it's like, who would ever think that this like fat so in a weird suit looks good, you know? And there's also one thing, reason why I hate this, as a side note, why I hate this Vogue company so much too, right? Because if anything, you know, these Vogue companies like Concord, let's call them Firewalk Studios, right? Yeah, Firewalk Studios. These kind of studios, they make people dislike gay people or people even more, right? Yeah, they're not progressive, or they're so progressive, but because they're failing so much in a bad way, they're just making people dislike progressive stuff more, right? Because it's like it's so tacky, it's so bad. Yeah, it's oh, look at her, she got like rainbow hair or something. It's crying, it's so much. It's always like, oh, look at this thing, she got this really weird outfit and she's like he, her thing, and it's so much, right? It's so in your face that it really just makes progression go backwards, right? Obviously, but anyway, my point of course is that, because I've been there, right? I worked on a game, in this case then, a strategy game, but it's more comparable to League or something, honestly, because even if you're playing more than one character, each character is like a hero. It's like a hero fighter. I don't want to get into too much details here. Well, my game doesn't really matter, but imagining something like here, League of Legends, you have heroes, right? Or champions in that case, but whatever, my point. Champions or so forth, right? And basically, right, I keep imagine, like I said, how in my case, all the managers are telling this guy that, oh, this is a great character. And I'm just like, no, it's absolute shit. I can imagine how Concord would be the same thing, right? Because you have those woke managers, and everyone is woke, and everyone's crazy lefty, and someone makes a really, really ugly hero, and no one will tell them, right, that is ugly, right? Also, so what's I mentioned earlier, you walk on eggshells. You don't wanna have some kind of tantrum or whatever. You don't wanna get triggerly puffed to get angry at you. So obviously you have that as well, right? You don't wanna create some incident or whatever. You have the HR thing and so on. That's one thing too, right? But I also think it's in general then this whole annoyance of just always telling them that it's great and these things and so forth, right? I've seen it so much in my own life, right? It just creates really, really terrible problems, right? I'm used to in game companies that you have a lot of debates. You fight all the time, and everyone kind of hates each other in a one way, but then you actually get a good product, right? Because everyone's like, you're an idiot, it should be a blue dragon, it should be red, you have that kind of fight, right? That's what I'm used to, right? And that's the best, not maybe not the best environment, but that's a good environment, because then you have these arguments, your fights, and you get a good product in the end, right? Because you're all like, should be that. But we have that typical Swedish, and it's Sweden, but yeah, Swedish Woke companies, you still have like, oh, you made a teddy bear. It was supposed to be a dragon, but as it's a teddy bear, how great! Yeah, like, that's kind of how you get, right? So obviously you end up with like really, really terrible characters, because I'm sure that Conquer has something, right, where none of the managers is telling the artist this is terrible idea, right? And like I said, with my whole playing the bad guy, even if you have one or few managers that actually are like, no, this is shit, right? That actually are openly like, no, I don't like this thing, redo it. I think you probably get into, like, in my experience, where it's like, well, I can do that. I can be in your face and be like, oh, this is terrible. But like I said, right, it's so much uphill battle because everyone else is being incredibly annoyingly positive and happy about everything you do, right? So it's just like, oh yeah, great, I have to be the only one doing that stuff. Another very common experience, I think, though, which is also very for this company, extremely much so, the same company with the terrible character, is that we had this insanely bad PR campaign, one of many bad ideas, but whatever. One of the owners had an incredible bad idea for marketing, but whatever. And my point is that every meeting, right, with the whole studio, I'm the only one being like, this is terrible, no one's ever gonna buy it, it's just shit, So I'm the bad guy. No, but I'm basically being like, this makes no sense, right? And then but basically everyone else is just so incredibly woke, right? Or afraid, but you got points. None of them are actually telling them the truth, right? All the other employees, all the other managers are just like, oh, this is great, man, whoa, great. And as soon as we leave the office, people are telling me going to the train or the cars or whatever, and going to the parking thing, they're telling me like, oh, you're great, that is terrible, bro. You're so right, man, that idea is terrible. And I'm just like, you could have told me that, why didn't you stand up, with me during the meeting? And they're like, no, but, so, well, of course, a very common thing with this, what's it called, especially Sweden, with the cast of Sweden, So in Sweden we have what's called, of course, åsiktskorridor, and it's like consensus culture, and it's very, very true in game companies, right? So very much like, I don't want to see anything that goes against the grain, against the wind or whatever. I want to be anything different. So this is also a very classic issue, especially in Sweden, but I see it in America too, in game companies. It's insensitive there. But everyone else, right, is like quiet, and it's really annoying because I know that basically everyone else except this guy is actually against this idea, right? I know that everyone else in the room, except the guy that said it, is against the idea, and I'm the only one being like, I'm against it, and everyone else is like, you're like, oh my god. So there's also an issue too, right? But just to the point there, I don't think you should be a no guy, right? And I'm not a no guy. This video probably makes me sound like a super negative, like no guy. I'm like, I hate everything. I'm against everything. Probably, but I don't think I'm not a no guy. It's just more that if I say a bad idea, I'm gonna, say it, right? And actually, I think what's important to understand though is that I'm not a no or a yes guy. I'm just, I'm telling you like it is, right? And what that means is that when I'm telling you that I like something, I actually like it, That's why I like it myself, honestly. Because everyone knows that I will always tell them exactly what I actually feel. If I like something, I will tell I love this thing. If I hate it, I will say I hate it, But to my coworkers, to my parents, to my wife, to my kids, to everyone, right? So everyone knows that I actually stand by what I say, right? And I think that's very, very true in life. Honestly, I think it helped me immensely, right? People actually respect me. No, but seriously, you might think whatever. No, but respect me at work and so on, because everyone at work knows that if I like something, then I actually will say I like it. Because if I hate it, I'll say I will hate it, right? So they know that if I actually tell them that I like a design, or I like this character, or I like the storyline, they're like, oh, he liked it? This actually means something, right? When everyone else just keeps saying they like everything, it means nothing, right, As a side note, I think the same thing with anime, right, I think all the time in my both anime and video game reviews that I really, really dislike so many YouTubers or other influencers, right? They keep pretending that everyone is great. I hate reactors that reacting and they just love everything. I hate this so much, right? Because when I react to games and anime and whatever, comic books, whatever, right, I am very honest, right? If I hate it, I will say I hate it, right? Because then you know that if I like it, I actually like it. You know what I mean? It makes the liking actually be having something value, right? And I also think if you like everything, you actually like nothing, right? Because it means that everything is just the same thing for you, right? And also, of course, it also goes all the way around, right? I also dislike people that just hate everything. Yeah, people that just hate everything, it's super boring too, right? So for me, it's important just to be honest with what I feel, right? So I just want to set the point. It's not that I'm sitting there just being like, I hate everything what you do guys are terrible. Of course not. That's not my experience with these companies. It's not like my coworkers, everything they do was just absolute shit and I hate everything. That's not the experience. But it's more that every time something was shit, right, it's incredibly hard to fix it because they were so woke. So every time you critique them and so on, they have to be. It's more that feeling that every time you actually find an issue, it is so hard to actually like change course or explain to someone what is wrong or has to be improved. And it also, of course, gives my björn chance, right, a beer failure, because it also means that if you have an artist and he has potential to be way better, right, but you never critique what he actually does, he's not gonna get better, right? If you have a coder, you never tell him that this is very ineffective. Why have you called that? If you never tell him that, he's not going to have to learn that, right? So you also hinder people to reach their potential because you're kind of just allowing them to be mediocre, right? And that's the last thing I said in the video. Also, of course, the general competence of some people, woke people, is very, very low, right? For two reasons why. First reason why, because they get hired, of course, by having the right ideas, right? So most, of course, wokies, right, they hire other wokies, which means that actual, whatever. basically, right, wokies hire wokies. So any kind of skills, merit has no value, right? Which, of course, means that they're terrible at the job in itself. But also because wokies never tell other wokies they do something wrong, right? Which means that the wokies never actually improve. So they're terrible, usually, immediately when they get hired, and they will never improve either, because no one is can allow to tell them that they are bad at it, because woke people can't handle the critique, they have merits, so it's really hard for them to also evolve, right, to develop, right? So it also kind of explains why they're so bad to begin with, right? Because they never improve, because they never have any critique, because they can never handle getting critiqued. The woke person can never be better at what they do, right? and then the other Woke guys will hire them anyway, so they get paid anyway and they never improve. But the reason they're bad to begin with is because they can't improve, because they can't handle any kind of critique, right? And then of course it's like an evil circle or whatever, called bad circle. So it's like that. And obviously, if they didn't get hired right by their friends, by their allies, so to speak, they would have to perhaps improve then, or quit their job, right? But perhaps they would have to improve that, of course, because, you know, like they would have to actually do something with their lives, right? But yeah, there's something that I see very often. People are failing upwards in general, not really with Woke itself, but people that manage to like fall upwards, right, so to speak, they will just actually get worse and worse what they're doing, because they clearly never have to really learn from anything they do is wrong, right? Which, but again, it's very common for the far leftists, that because you just keep hiring each other, where obviously like right-wing people are in general more, not just more merit-based, but also, of course, more economically capitalist-based, right? So that's why it doesn't happen as much as the right, because the right are much more focused on money and like numbers or whatever, right? But certainly, of course, general nepotism happens on any political side, obviously. But I think that you see it very commonly in today's media market, right? You see like these writers are terrible writers. They write some really god-awful like Netflix adaptation, and then they get hired to write another one. Like, who? Why? Who hired them again? Oh, it's the friends, of course, right? And like I said, they start at bottom level, skill level, because they never had to learn to improve. So they start at level 1. They could actually probably reach level 10, but they never had to do that. And they keep getting hired anyway, so they're failing upwards, and they never actually improve, right? But anyway, guys, that's the video, guys. Subscribe, like, but it's more Kennedy today. But I'm thinking about it for a while, right? And I have so many more stories about that guy. It's the first guy. The first guy is crazy, because my favorite story with him is the one when I found him crying in his office. A crazy long story. But the thing is that that's not the kind of video, right? It's just stories, but I have to emphasize that how incredibly bad that person is. Like, it's just like I have like 55 more stories about him doing crazy stuff. Like I said, he's a convicted felon. He's a terrible, terrible person in every regard. And yet the CEO is like, oh, CEO basically is like, he's so bad that he refused to fire him, because he's like, no, but if I fire him, no one will ever hire him. I'm the only one that ever gave him a chance. We're like, yeah, because he's freaking crazy. Like, so he's like, I can't fire him, you know. But it's so weird. It's just, I never understood it ever. It's just so weird. Because eventually, right, you might have to give him a paycheck and say, go home. Yeah, like if you feel sorry for him. It's just super weird. But anyway, guys, have a great Christmas, and see you guys in a few days with more videos.